All right, everybody, welcome to the Talent Insights podcast brought to you by HireWell and Sourcewell. Getting back to my roots today a little bit, talking a little tech. Those of you who don't recall, I was a tech recruiter way back in the day for about 10 years. Special guest, enterprise architect from Coyote Logistics, and more importantly, someone who knows how to troll the internet, Chris Taylor.
Thank you, sir.
That's basically how we met, right?
Pretty much. I was like, you know what? This guy thinks he's more sarcastic than me. And it ends up you are. So you win. But I wanted to at least challenge myself a little bit, So
well, you're the actual stand-up comedian, so I guess you've got a little more accolades than I do. So you should.
Well, we'll call it that. I don't know yet. Trying.
Aspiring stand-up comedian.
Aspiring, yes.
We've had a lot of side conversations over the years, and just in the comments of LinkedIn sometimes on certain posts and whatnot. And I wanted to have you on because we're on different sides of the hiring area, right? So we're always trying to find talent, and you've always been pretty outspoken. You're actually doing the hiring, you're actually vetting people out. And you've also looked for jobs, and you've kind of been on that side too. I don't know if we have an official title for this podcast, but I know one of the things that you felt really passionately about is the concept of citizen developers or second career coders or career pivots in general. And I've seen a lot, especially since the pandemic, people who are trying to pivot their career either into technology or into some other area, and they feel like it's just impossible. But your thoughts on it are, it's very possible. It's just that people don't know how to do it. It's not advertised very well and whatnot. So I don't know. I guess if you want to kick this off, maybe, I don't know if you want to start about what led us onto this kind of topic to begin with.
Sure. Yeah, I think what kind of that got us there was it's kind of a funny story as well. Like everything else, is that one of the reasons I reached out to you, and we talked about people burning out during the pandemic or wanting to make those career switches. Obviously, I want to make a career switch of my own from IT, but that wasn't more what we started talking about. It was ironically my ex-wife who wanted to switch her career potentially into IT, and we had kind of spoken about, one of the things about her is she's incredibly intelligent, of course. She has 2 degrees. She's been a teacher for, 20 some years, or well, probably not that long, 15, 20 years right in there. And she has to deal with all sorts of different people, if you will, every day in audiences and stuff like that, as well as technologies too. I guess what it is that a lot of the technologies, I guess, that we've built anymore today are pretty common across systems, or at least the way they work are pretty common. And so it becomes more about how you work with people or understand or have that experiences you've had in life become more valuable in how you put kind of larger systems together, like these applications. In my specific instance, she's learning how to do Power Apps and virtual agents and stuff like that. And what was amazing is how quickly she was able to adopt it. It didn't take any effort by me, which I'm really happy about, because it showed that, hey, you don't need to have the expertise or a background in IT even to be able to make that jump, because IT isn't about writing code anymore, if you want to look at it that way, or what we used to think of it being. It's more about how business operates overall, where we use automation systems or IT systems to basically improve communication and efficiency of how we move from beginning to end of a product, or how we make money. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that isn't taught necessarily in a classroom, if you will. That's more just stuff you learn in life. It's not like anyone really sticks with one company for any one period of time. So we all kind of just borrow and
life experience and broad range of those experiences. I've noticed, not to make it about myself right off the bat, but different things I've done, it's things I've done for fun, blogging and writing and other things like that. You realize they're directly related to how you can do your job better, you know what I mean? Or do things differently, or innovate, or things like that, as opposed to just learning by the book and kind of going through the same structure regimen that everybody else does, regardless of the field.
Right, because a lot of that's almost done early on to give you a way to see it or whatever. But as you kind of grow with life experiences and stuff like that, as you said, is you're able to understand things a little bit easier, or different, or a different perspective is easier, to adopt or adhere to. I don't know what the word I'm looking for there is, or just you can see things differently and you can learn it faster. So for example, I'll use the teacher example again, is one of the things that she didn't realize. She's like, well, I don't see how I'd possibly be effective in this. You're amazing at time management, being incredibly resourceful, and you have to adjust your audience that you're talking to from people that are high communicators, from your teachers and your staff and your parents and stuff, down to when you get down to the special ed side, where you have nonverbal students and stuff like that. And you have to do that range all the time and find a way to communicate between them effectively, which I think is what people kind of misunderstand about what a teacher does in a lot of ways, that they're the most effective communicators you can imagine. And that is an amazing skill that you cannot be taught. But
Yeah.
knowing how to wrap that together with just like tying some little if, then, and else together through a simple interface, you can provide a massive amount of value in a very, very short amount of time.
Well, it's also, I think that being able to communicate with who your stakeholders are and understanding where the gaps are, because that's the biggest challenge I see with technology on a broader scale right now, is that everyone's building stuff that doesn't necessarily solve a problem, like not to
Yeah,
turn this into a Web3 rant, but like
totally. No, that's
what
absolutely fair.
what are they trying to act like? I'm a huge proponent of blockchain. I'm a big fan of like Bitcoin early on and whatnot. Like I hope someday there's actually a point to all this, but
Sure.
like for all the VC money and stuff that gets put in there, and it's just because I think that people who just grow up through tech and are so ingrained in tech culture, it's about being the smartest and making the coolest widget and stuff like that, as opposed to something that actually solves a regular problem for real
Yes.
people. And that's where the gap of not having like broader range and broad experience of being able to communicate with people, I think is a big detriment to the industry. And why I guess agree with you, is having more people that do have kind of broad experience, and whether that's second career coders or people like that is such a good thing. I don't know.
Yeah, because a lot of the tooling that we've got now, especially like you hear a lot about these low code, no code platforms, which everyone has their definite, but it's just a lot of things to basically make, it easier for anyone to accomplish what we consider routine tasks. They're kind of mundane, but like they'll annoy you enough that if you want to, you can just connect some links together and it'll do it for you automatically. The barrier to entry is so much lower than it used to be before. Like, I guess even 10 years ago to now, there's been a lot of adoption and research to how we can encourage people to use it. Because the thing is, we built these systems, these low code systems, and then no one used it. So it was like, well, what was the point? Because it was built for, we're not developers. And that's where it's kind of like we've evolved, where now we have something that's like, okay, we can build anything we want, communicate different ways. It's like, but what do we build?
Yeah.
And now we need those people to go out there like, hey, this isn't necessarily hard, it's something to learn, but it's far easier to learn than what it was, and it's not as intimidating as it used to be, and take comfort in that and have fun with it, if you will. Because people like myself are just like, well, I don't even know because my life is so much different and it's so focused around just these development of these specific tools, I don't get to see what others see on their day-to-day life. You know what I mean? So for me, designing like HR software or recruiting software, kind of silly because I
Yeah.
haven't lived that.
That's I can tell you that's the biggest problem with HR and recruiting software. It's all crap because it's been developed by people who don't know anything about HR recruiting or like what the real problems are. And that's why it's like the most behind, because to be honest, it's probably the least interesting thing out there. You know what I mean? So I'll say this too, because you'll see a lot of I guess the issue I always have with LinkedIn conversations is you always get the frustrated crowd chiming in, people who just like, they might be down in their luck, or they're having a hard time finding a job, or they're saying like, and that's not to poo-poo the way they feel about their situation, but it still makes it look like it's futile and that these kind of transitions can't be done and whatnot. But I can tell you 15 years ago, when boot camps first started popping up, there was so much snobbery against them, right? I remember the amount of meetings I had where the hiring manager or the head of TA, when we would try to recruit developers, he'd be like, well, don't give me any boot camp people because they're all garbage. They don't know what they're doing. It's a waste of our time. Now it's an absolute beast of a pipeline. Like the amount it's changed. I wonder like how much of it is boot camps have gotten better. How much of it has the technology changed to make more relevant? How much of it is people doing the hiring, pulling their heads out of their ass? Or is it kind of a combination of those three? I don't know.
I think that there's a combination there for sure. The technology has definitely enabled it a lot more. One of the things I really like, what Microsoft has done specifically with their kind of learning, with their acquisitions especially, is when they bought LinkedIn and they bought GitHub. There is a very cool, and this is what I've instructed others to do too, is there's this very cool path that you do learning through like learn.microsoft.com, and that associates with both your LinkedIn account and your GitHub account. And so what you're able to do is start to just, through your learning, establish a portfolio. In 15 years ago, to do all that, GitHub really wasn't a thing. Most repos is like you had like SourceForge or Codeplex or something like that, whereas like it was still very kind of specific. It wasn't as adopted as it used to be now, or it wasn't even as integrated as it was now. Now, when you have, like I said, with some of these learning systems are being combined to show your progress, your growth, that makes a boot camp even more effective, because then you're able to see kind of the history behind it too. You could tell if somebody copy and pasted, for that matter. Yeah, you're able to see people's progress now because of that technology. And I think that there's more people that are taking it seriously. It's not as many fly-by-night operations that are opening these boot camps, if you will.
Yeah,
it is
okay.
more serious people that are getting behind it. Like, hey, we like the idea of it. I have a similar program in my own organization, but the way that it was initially done was just poor, or was taken advantage of. And that happens with everything.
Training's hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you don't have a true training background, you know, like any non-teacher, it's hard to like turn back the clock and think what would have helped me. So like organizations that are trying to figure out their training for the first time, this has been us, you know. It's their first couple cycles of doing it aren't the best, but you have to, I think the companies that commit to it, especially I have to imagine the tech, it's going to get better over time, then it's really going to pay off. So
yeah, and it takes investment, because you got to learn how you learn, and you got to learn how to learn, or you know what I mean? And it's this weird inverse, and you realize like how much you kind of know on your own versus being taught. You know, and that kind of goes back to like what we're talking about, like getting into elitistness of programming against like boot camps and stuff like that. I remember one time in my career where it was an awkward moment, and I was sitting around with a bunch of architects and senior engineers, and they're like, we all have, it wasn't distinguished, but like official backgrounds or credentialed backgrounds in software development. And I was like, I don't. And they're like, what? They're like, no, you have a college degree in CS. I'm like, no, I have a college degree. I did not say CS. There is a CS in there, but that's not what it is. And I'm like, my degree is in business. And so I have more of a finance and accounting background, but I did computer science, or the computer systems. It's almost like MIS with a little bit more CS in it, and some COBOL. So I used to TA COBOL as well, which to try to forget. But you can make a lot of money today doing that if anyone wants to. So kind of going back to boot camps and what is, it's definitely changed today. It's better. There's still some garbage out there, but there's a lot better ways to vet out what different students, like you can individualize the quality of students a lot more because of technology that's available today.
All right, there's two questions. I'm going to throw them both out there just so I don't forget. Hopefully one of us remember to whichever one to take first. One, let's say you want to transition into tech, you want to become a developer, your career's already going. Where would you go? You mentioned them. I know you're big on the Microsoft, their portal and everything else. Is that kind of your go-to you'd recommend, or any other places you would tell people to go if they're first trying to cut their teeth on it?
There's tons of stuff. It really kind of depends what you want to get into. The reason I recommended going down that way was it allowed you to do something kind of effective quickly. You could use like some of the Amazon stuff, even, if you will. They have like a low code, no code platform within it as well to like work with the Echo and with various devices and stuff like that. Google has stuff too. It tends to be a little more advanced, but there's certainly sort of information out there. You'll see a lot of them kind of all partner together too. That's what's really interesting, like 3 large organizations like that. When I say like, it depends what you want to get into, is because there's so many different facets of IT that you can get into, or you can use technology within any job function. That's where it's hard to start. It's like, well, if you could automate something, that's usually what I ask people first, is if you could automate something, or what annoys you that you do every day. And that could be anything. You could be having to make toast or coffee or something like that. You can kind of like say, all right, well, maybe you're interested in doing, IoT or something. I know it's a bit of a jump, but like you can start to steer a conversation that way. Because the other part is like, I'm more surprised what people are able to come up with when just given something that works. And the reason I do, again, the Microsoft way, or why I promote that, is just because like I've just done it and I know it. And I can tell, I know a lot of people can go, and I've seen others that can go do it within moments without me having to be involved. You know what I mean? And I just don't have experience on the other ones with it. And by seeing something like a simple automation running and like reading your email and then scanning it for words or something, you think that'd be 10 years ago, that actually kind of really hard to do. And in this, you can actually do it in like 5 minutes and see the outputs of it. It's amazing what people will start thinking or asking about. Oh, can I do this with it? Can I do this with it? It's like, well, technically, yes. that's where you start to drive their path. Because I don't want to like say, here's the base and you have to know everything, because you don't. Who gives a shit? All those details don't matter to be truly innovative. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this then. This came up in a conversation today. Let's say you're talking to an 18-year-old kid just out of high school. They want to become a coder. They want to get into tech. Do you tell them to go to college or not?
Like a university or a community college?
Well, university. Do you tell them to take out 100 to 200K in student loans to become a coder, or do you suggest they go a different route?
I would suggest they do other things with that money if they have it. Now, if you've got $100 grand to burn just for fun and you want to go have a great social experience and learn some other stuff, totally do it. Recommend it all the way. A lot of fun.
It's so much cheaper in our day.
Right. Yeah.
You didn't have to mortgage you didn't have to mortgage the next 20 years of your life to go. Oh my God.
Right. Like I see some of the prices now. I'm like, no. Yeah. That is not going to pay you back. So yeah, most of the best developers I've ever met, or most, what I consider the best, and by best, I consider those that they think through a problem and they solve a problem. They make something better. Is it the cleanest code in the world, the most efficient in terms of like cyclomatic complex, whatever that thing is? You don't know. Like you can see how much I care. Yeah. No, it doesn't matter.
Don't look at me. I don't know what you're trying to say. It doesn't matter. Keep going.
Yeah, someone's gonna flame me on this one out there, I'm sure. So whatever that is, like, it doesn't matter that you can show the value of it in an immediate term or something like that. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to think about all these core details. It's if you can show a value to others. Yeah. So you're not going to learn. Most universities that I've seen do not teach this stuff evolves so fast that they cannot have professors learn it fast enough to teach an 18-year-old those concepts to be effective at 22 and stuff like that.
That came up in our discussion today we were having online, and I forget the gentleman's name who pointed this out. It's like universities might teach you something, but they really don't teach you the things that are actually used in the real world. How you would actually code at your company or how you solve this specific problem. It's like you're still a level removed from that. So I don't know.
And that's why the business degree helped me, or like the finance background. It's because like, oh, now I understand like what we're doing in banking or accounting, like why, credit, debits, why this has to be a certain way. And that was effective because I understood the language of people that I was building software for, not just like software developers. Like, no, I can communicate with somebody and what their language is versus just what I know. Because in the end, software is just if, then, else, and repeat. Like, yeah. I know I probably shared the magician's secret or something like that, but it's not. That's all these machines can do is if, then, and else. Just a lot of times.
How much of this hiring are you seeing? Because the thing I have to say, where I'm at a disadvantage as a recruiter is no one hires us to find people who are making a career pivot. They're always asking us to find someone who's got X experience doing X job. I mean, that's why they get us involved in the first place. I always feel terrible when someone's like, hey, I'm trying to make a pivot. I can give them some advice, but it's rare that I can actually place someone. How many second recruiters are you seeing? What's kind of have you noticed, what's the increase, whether it's your company or elsewhere? How successful are people at it at this point?
Some still to be seen, I guess. We've done a little from what I've seen. There's been some people that have gone into roles, I guess, that were not traditionally, it was different than what they had done. And their expectations were different, where they're taking on more of a technical role versus, let's say, just pure project management. They had to incorporate technology into their project management, you know what I mean? Whether it be automation or something like that. And what we're seeing there is that they're actually adopting it very, very quickly and enjoying it. And at the same time, having it's kind of funny because they're having imposter syndrome in certain ways. They're like, this is kind of easy. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, I can get paid for this? I'm like, yeah. Totally.
You can get paid double what you were making before even.
Yeah. And so that's something on the teacher side, especially, like with Jen, she's like, wait, this isn't that. I'm like, I had told you for years, I'm a con man. And she's like, I thought you were kidding. And I'm like, a little bit. But I'm like, I told you this stuff wasn't necessarily complex and that we were building systems to make it easier to build these larger kind of systems together, so that it wasn't difficult. But in the end, all we're doing is trying to map things out and make things talk together. So and they're like, well, this just makes sense. And I'm like, yeah, that's fantastic to hear, because I have people who have been doing it 20 years like, well, why do I have to do it this way?
Yeah.
And
no, It's what I really took away from, because when you and I kind of had a conversation before this, is just how attainable it is for people, how there's teachers or anyone. I keep bringing up teachers because obviously you mentioned the anecdote with your ex-wife, but also we've had good success hiring teachers here at Hirewell and kind of training them. We get that request a lot. It seems like there's a lot of people in the teaching field that want to get into something different. And I'm sure there's people in lots of different fields too. I'm not biased towards teachers, but just what's been kind of top of mind for me. But it is something where these things are so much more achievable and doable than people realize. It's just committing a little bit of time to it. And you've already have a lot of the skills. And it's funny because I've always made fun of imposter syndrome a little bit in the regards that everyone talks about it online. And I'm always just like, just means you have low self-esteem. But but in reality, it's that people don't know how the bacon's made. They think it's way more complex than it is. They always think that like what you do is so much more magical and complicated and complex. And it's really, you already have 2/3 of it in your mind already. And the people that you think are pros in whatever field, whether it's technology or something else, they don't really know that much more than you. They've just been doing it longer.
Right. Some people are just like, you have to read. It's kind of funny that the bar you have to get to is like, no, you just have to read like 3 paragraphs further than everybody else, and you are so much further ahead. Because getting people to like, that was the interesting thing is like, we have people that we pay, obviously, not just this happens at every org, where you pay them a decent salary, and you'd expect them to go out and learn technologies like this to go benefit the rest of the org and stuff, because that's kind of what you expect of them. And you'll hear pushback on why they haven't or can't and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, then you get someone like that sends a message to others that is too hard for them. When in reality, in many cases, it's just people being lazy or stuck in their ways. And then now when you have others going out they're doing it and they're like, this works. And you have someone that's kind of, positive and motivational. It's like, yeah, you're right. You did it. They're like, you're serious. I did it. I'm like, that doing it.
That was the whole thing.
And they're like, this person made it sound like, yeah, they kind of lied to you. I'm sorry.
I can't believe you get paid this much working in tech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, I should have done this years ago. I'm like, yes, you should have.
Well, slight pivot, because there's one last topic we want to hit on. The LinkedIn Open to Work banner.
Sure.
There's a lot of needless drama about this topic. I feel like it's something where you get people saying it makes you look needy. You get other people saying there's no harm in putting it out there. You got me saying, honestly, I don't care. I think it's the dumbest debate ever. But you actually had an interesting take on this that I think a lot of other people missed. And I think it's worth.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'll give you the floor on this one.
Oh, sure. So like being me, likes to experiment and test things out. And so when the feature came out a few months ago or a few years ago, or whenever it was, I decided to just fire it up there for fun. But I did have a backstory behind it, is that it still goes back to the idea of what I'm trying to pivot to in a new career. I was like, hey, I'm looking to leave IT, maybe not now necessarily, but it may not be, or I may be looking for something or open to work for whatever reason, but it may not be because I'm unhappy or anything like that. It's just, hey, this is personally something I want to do. And regardless of me saying that, or even putting, when it says open to work, when it says work type, I had stand-up comedian. Apparently not that funny, because 1, no one called, and 2, got in trouble. Because regardless of what I said, they're like, well, that looks bad. The organization wasn't necessarily a fan of it, or some people weren't a fan of it, let's put it that way. That they're like, well, this is what it implies, that you're unhappy about this. It's like, no, just sometimes, it's kind of like doing Uber on the side. Maybe you're looking for something different to do. Maybe I want to get into whatever it happens to be. People make too many assumptions on what it means, and that it obviously means that you're unhappy because we can only do one thing for work. Sometimes some of us are just bored.
No, I
That's
get
my
it.
thoughts.
Yeah. We live in a world where everything has to be like, polar opposites, black, white. Either you love your job, or you hate your job. There's no in between. You know what I mean?
Right.
But reality, we see that every day. There's all kinds of people who are they're content, but they're always looking for something better, or they're always open to it.
Which isn't how we're supposed to be anyways, like looking for opportunity.
Yeah. Unless you're supposed to be that if you're at someone else's company, but not at your company.
Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
So
anything else you want to hit up on while I got you here?
Not really. Like I said, you're spot on. Like I have noticed more teachers than anything. I think just you're probably going to see more of those because they're seeing the capabilities. There's that free time. The way the school system's been kind of treated through the pandemic, depending which districts, when where, has been kind of, some have been good are great, and then others not as much. There gets a point in life where people just get fed up and they want to break. And I think you're going to see a lot of that because, again, these are some of the most effective employees I've ever seen. And can they manage time? If you've probably seen that with some of yours, it's like I have so much free time now.
Yeah,
which is awesome. Yeah, so I'm excited about that and seeing what kind of evolves from it going forward.
Yeah, I would say kind of just like last thing to wrap it up. If you're out there, if you're thinking about a pivot, you think it's impossible, it's not. If you're like, technology is a great area to be in, there's not enough technology people in this country to do any of these roles. The types of roles are changing. It's becoming something where, like as Chris said, the low code, no code platforms are making things more achievable for anyone who's just smart and intuitive, can solve problems. And there's another career out there waiting for you. That's it. That's all I got for this one. So
thanks again for James for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And thanks to everyone out there for tuning in the Talent Insights podcast. You like how I did that, David? Part of the Talent Insights series, which is always available for replay on talentinsights.hireable.com, as well as YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon. Chris, thanks again. Everyone out there, see you soon.